The proceeding...
Order. Good morning and welcome to the Energy Security and Net Zero Committee. This is our fifth session on our heating our homes inquiry. We've got two panels this morning. The first panel focusing on workforce and skills, and the second panel on international perspectives. The first panel are with us and before us, and I will ask them all to introduce themselves as they see fit. Name, rank and serial number, starting on my left.
Mark Crowther, Fellow Institute of Gas Engineers and Hydrogen Director, Kiwa.
Thank you and welcome.
Good morning, Robert Nitsch. I'm the Delivery Director at the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, and we convene employers to design, approve and assure technical qualifications, including apprenticeships.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Hi there, Aadil Qureshi. I'm Chief Executive of Geek. We are a national network of heating engineers helping homeowners to decarbonise their homes.
And welcome, good to see you and good to see you all. Just to kick off, Robert Nitsch, do the government and industry have a clear picture, do you think, of where skill challenges exists in the home heating and the retrofit workforce?
I think that's not an area that the Institute generates products. Clearly, it's really interested in what skills are needed for the future and foresighting those skills and anticipating those, and also making sure that the workforce we develop has the necessary skills to adapt to that. I think the government has a number of priorities which we respond to, of which the green economy is one of those.
And do you think this government announcements of appearing at least change in tone, if only that, has a ripple effect onto industry?
Or just to explore that, so you're saying when the government makes an announcement, does that influence what happens on the ground?
I'm thinking particularly of the September announcement, when the widely trailed that the government was rolling back a little on some changes.
I couldn't really comment on that particular announcement, but we do see that government interventions do make a difference in how people take up or take forwards their investment in skills, and there are multiple ways that they can influence that. But I would say, not least, that was only September. I think it takes quite a long time for these things to filter through.
Okay, Qureshi, governments often talk about market forces, but some people counter and say that government is the biggest force in the market. Any thoughts?
We have homeowners coming to us every day seeking advice, insight, support on how to decarbonise their home. The boiler upgrade scheme has been a massive propellant to that, I think, and has been a huge help for homeowners to make the business case where one is to be made. On the other side of the industry, we have engineers who are looking to further their careers, further their businesses, grow their businesses and their skills. And I do believe, and we believe, that there is an interplay between government policy and that demand. But we really focus on building an amazing product both for our engineers and for the homeowners that they serve, and in doing so allow those market forces to kind of override or counteract any maybe short-term aberrations in the strategy that government put forward, we think.
Thank you. Mark Crowther, are there clear pathways for how the existing workforce can be retained and upskilled in new roles and technologies? I'm thinking particularly of heat pumps. I hear a lot of people say that for some older engineers or installers, that just getting your hand on heat pumps or getting a handle on heat pumps is not uppermost in their minds. Is that fair or unfair?
Certainly isn't. I totally agree with that. Certainly isn't. If you're 40, you think, well, the gas industry will see me out anyway, the current natural gas. If you're younger, you've probably borrowed the $5,000 from your parents or something, maybe to go on an environmental, on a low energy, on a low carbon heating course or something. But the thing you really want is your gas safe ticket, because that enables you to, earn good money day in, day out, changing condensing boilers or doing landlord certificates. And I think it's in terms of getting more training in the if you like, greener technologies, it's a matter of market pull as much as, if you like, as trying to push people down it. Because particularly if you're a young man, 30, you've got the opportunity to put in a condensing boiler, say a couple of condensing boilers in a day. Mm-hmm. In the case of a heat pump, you've got to make speculative visits. So you get a call. You've got to then do a design, which might take you half a day if you've got the skills to do that design. And if you're doing the design, that's speculative. You can't be out on the tools earning money. And then that we know that the callbacks on heat pumps and the simply complexity of heat pumps installation, fundamentally because of their low operating temperature, just are more. I mean, my learning colleagues on my left here will explain that, we can do it right, we have all the skills. But anecdotally, if you talk to electricians or something who've tried to put heat pumps in, and if you like, the industry is awash with these, they're more than anecdotes, they're really strong knowledge that, we put one in at 13 Elm Avenue and it had to come out because it didn't work very well, or they fall out, they're frightened of their Trustpilot ratings. It's just a high risk. Why would you try to push a heat pump when you can make good money banging out condensing boilers?
You're saying that there's a tension. Okay,
you spoke about the time taken to install a heat pump because it operates at a lower temperature. What about the high temperature heat pumps that are now available? Why isn't that a more effective solution to the problem, and why can't the existing gas engineer simply replace the gas boiler with the high temperature heat pump?
Because he doesn't tend to believe that those high temperature, it tends to affect the COP. Now, again, I know theoretically it doesn't, and you can show me lots of data which show they have high efficiency, but in practice, to the ordinary homeowner, you have to be more skilled as an installer, a lot more, and you have to take more risk. Because if the person has used micro bore for the ground floor bathroom at the back, and you're thinking, this is quite a risk, because it's just 10mm pipe. Will I get away with it? And bearing in mind how averse lots of people are from risk, and this guy's actually stomping his own money to take that risk or not, and the householder will get cross.
At the high temperature.
Sorry?
Even the microboard at the high temperature he's worried about.
Because it's 55 rather than 80. So he'll get away with it when it's 80. With 55, he probably won't. And then you've got the system balancing, you've got to have space for a buffer tank, you've got to have space for the domestic hot water tank. The householder is used to a combi whereby they got limitless hot water, and they're suddenly going to a domestic hot water tank, which they've got to find room for. My daughter's just taken a domestic water tank out because she wants to put a bicycle where she's taken the domestic hot water tank out.
She's helping the environment in one way, but not another.
Absolutely spot on. I couldn't have put it better myself. Mr. McNeil.
She's maybe carbon neutral in what she's done, but everybody else wouldn't be.
I thought it was a good example.
Fair enough. Mark, do you want to continue that?
No, that's fine.
Because it's puzzling. I mean, looking at some of the data, France, for instance, and the Nordic countries, seem to have these reservations about heat pumps, and our work uses them very well. I think France has got 12 times the installations of the UK in 2022.
But they put in boiler. Certainly, friends of ours retired to France, wood burning stove, big wood burning stove, and you have the heat pump as background heat. I think in Scandinavia, I may be correct, there may be something, but I think you have to install a wood burning stove anyway alongside your heat system. And certainly in France, most of the people, everyone we know has a wood-burning stove, if you like, in the middle of winter, if you want one. That's just not practical in Winchester.
Anybody else got any comments on?
Yeah, just a few, and appreciate Mark's comments there. Just to bring some statistics into the room, and again, not from some far-flung report, but from our own experience. We've trained 2,000 engineers, which is a small step on a long journey. These engineers have come to us. They are existing gas engineers who are still making money, as Mark mentions, with the gas system, but see a future in which domestic electrification can provide them not only with additional skills, which, by the way, are useful in the context of the new Part L regulations for gas systems, to make those systems more efficient as we transition over, but to give them the opportunity to earn more money, to be a pillar of their community and a place to go for advice and services. And we are, frankly, awash with inquiries from engineers who are in that camp. Now, I'm not here to say that that is the entirety of the market. I believe Mark's comments apply to some folks. But we are tangibly and specifically equipping engineers with digital training that doesn't need to take them off the tools, doesn't need to put them into a training course, and enables them to not just install future systems such as heat pumps, but also to advise their community on the matters that we're describing here, because fundamentally that's who homeowners go to.
I'm just wondering if there's a bit of a misunderstanding of heat pumps versus the European context of, a heat pump throwing 10 kilowatts into a house and a gas boiler throwing 30 kilowatts into a house. So it's more energy intensified, and then rather than the background hum. And it depends if your house is losing, let's say, 5 to 6 kilowatts of energy. It's inevitably going to take it longer to get your heat up. Is there an issue of the understanding of the way homes are heated that's a problem between boilers and homeowners here, rather than places where it would appear on the surface at least heat pumps are successful?
Yes, I think to refer to a study, Nesta did a recent study and found that people who had heat pumps in the UK were absolutely fine, to summarise it very glibly. The misunderstanding is manifold, which is why we have actually launched a YouTube channel. We encourage members to check it out. The Heat Geek YouTube channel explains some of these...
YouTube channel?
Absolutely. It's the most popular heating engineering YouTube channel in the world. So
I don't think we get any commercial royalties.
No royalties, no advertising. So... On that channel, we explain these basic concepts. A 30 kilowatt gas boiler does not put out 30 kilowatts of heat. It's a misunderstanding. It does so for the hot water. To balance the heat demand of a property with the output of a heat pump is all that's required in order to get a heat pump working. It's literally an equation of heat loss versus the output of the heat pump. Yeah. And if your heat loss is too high, then you should insulate. And you can insulate fairly minimally in order to bring that heat loss down. If you are living in, Windsor Castle, maybe that's not quite the case, but there is a huge bell curve of the homes in the UK where they work. We have hundreds of installations underway and in progress with homeowners, incredibly satisfied. And I think one other aspect that members should understand is that at the same time as electrifying heat, we are digitizing it. We are connected via an API and the network technology to every heat pump we install. And so we can see the exact efficiency, the standard of the temperature that the home is achieving, and project on issues that homeowners may be facing before they manifest.
I've got a minute to hand over, but I did see Mark shaking his head, and I do enjoy, if you'll indulge me, a disagreement on the panel. So before I hand to Vicky forward, Mark, you've got about 10:13, if you can see a clock to see what you want. Yeah, I saw you shaking your head.
Sorry, I mean, this digitisation is just too complicated for the man in the street. He and his wife will run busy lives. Often the internet goes down, yet you don't want your heating to go down. I mean, it's wonderful. If you're sort of a genuine green enthusiast, and I'm not being, that has the wrong connotations, because I'm not. We have to decarbonise by 2050, but we need to do simple stuff. I went to a modular block of flats in Hackney. They had problems out there because they'd installed these. Each flat weighed 60 tons of concrete, and they'd fitted a 3 kilowatt heat pump. A 3 kilowatt heat pump is the amount of energy you get off your front hob, and you're going to heat 60 tons of concrete. Can you imagine what the weight in trying to heat that? Well, of course you can do it, but if you let the flat go cold because you couldn't pay your electricity bill, then it took you 3 days to heat the back up. Or else you were on the immersion heater override, which is costing you £2 an hour or something.
Thank you for that, Vicky Ford.
Sorry.
No, I heard it, but time beat us.
So before I start declaration of interest, I'm very proud of the new facility at Chelmsford College, which is a purpose-built facility to teach construction and environmental technologies. They had a fantastic person cutting the ribbon when they opened it. Can't think who she was.
Who was that by any chance, Vicky Ford?
And also, another declaration of interest, I'm particularly grateful to Heat Geeks. Some of you know that one of my constituents had a very bad experience having a heat pump fitted, and Heat Geeks have sorted it out, and I'm hugely grateful. And a third declaration of interest on this heat technology. I love digitisation. I love being able to switch up and down my home heating from my phone. Makes a huge difference. I'm not heating my home when I'm not there. So, does the government have a plan to increase the array of courses offered by education and training providers in low carbon technologies and home retrofit? Aadil, do you want to start with that?
We were discussing just outside, we're incredibly excited about the array of work that's going on in this space. I think Robert and his colleagues working on the new apprenticeship standards launching this year, low carbon heating apprenticeships and so on, MCS involved as well in that. We're incredibly excited about that stuff. Most training colleges that you mentioned, Vicky, like they do offer low carbon courses. I think the only sort of slight gap is the recognition that attending a course, sitting at the back for 3 days and having your name ticked off on a list is by no comparison to achieving the outcomes that we can measure through the technology on an ongoing basis. We offer digital training courses for engineers who want to learn around their work, that don't want to take time off the tools, that want to be able to dip in and out of the training using engaging video content, like you'll find on our YouTube channel. And
at heatgeek.com.
You can see it through heatgeek.com, or just go to YouTube and search HeatGeek. And just as was mentioned in terms of the constituent, you know, these are engineers who are deeply passionate about their industry. They are perhaps less, shall we say, tied to technology A or technology B. They just want to achieve great outcomes for their homeowners. So the slight gap that we see is the recognition that alternative learning styles in 2024 may unlock the scale that is required for this challenge. And again, I point to digital training in as much as I point to digital outcomes measurements.
Thank you. I think we all learnt a lot about pros and cons of online learning in the pandemic. And there were pros as well as cons. Robert, can you set out how you work with training providers to ensure that courses and qualifications are consistent? Because we want to have installers who are consistent, and how we also make sure that those courses are attractive and that they really match what the sector needs.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing to say is that we develop the products that we approve with employers. Training providers provide input into that, but the skills system is employer-focused, it's employer-led. So when an apprenticeship is defined or when a qualification is approved, that is employer-led, and that's a demand-led market, which is where we've moved to. Clearly, we're very interested in the consistency of the supply, and we have quality assurance mechanisms for looking at that and trying to make sure that Ofqual, Ofsted and other sort of regulators who are out there looking at delivery are making sure that there's that consistency. Our contribution to that is to make sure that what employers specify is something that is accessible, it's something that is interpretable, and also it strikes the right balance between detail and generalism. And the Institute is really focused on that quality element of its products, in the same way that actually it's very, very focused on delivering against the sort of homes improvement agenda. And in fact, the Institute started revisiting all its products about 4 or 5 years ago. It graded them by degrees of green, and it has brought in a committee from outside the Institute of experts in sustainability in this area to help us look at our product range to sort of retrofit that, for want of a better phrase. And we're now very much involved in delivering standards that look forwards and qualifications that look forwards, and retrofit coordinator is about to emerge, insulating technician, district heating technician, laying the basis of those courses and qualifications which will build the workforce for the future. We are incredibly focused on that.
So that sort of makes sense to me if I was thinking about the 16 plus age group and young people starting off at the beginning of this journey, moving into this trade. But a lot of the plumbers and contractors are self-employed, experienced tradespeople who've been used to working with gas boilers. How are you making sure that we've got that upskilling for those people that doesn't take them away from their day job, earning the money that pays their bills?
It's a really good point. Just to deal with an element of that though, approximately 50% of apprentices today are not new entrants to the workforce. They are people that are upskilling in the workforce. But in terms of dealing with the problem that you've very reasonably outlined, I think we need a blend of skills solutions. So actually, short qualifications that allow people to get that uplift is really important. and actually we commission those, and we're expanding our ability to do that. And as the government skill programme rolls out, and particularly the approval of level 2 and level 3 qualifications, we will see more and more of those courses appear. So I think it's a blend of options.
So you're using boot camps?
Yep, that is in there as well. So there's qualifications that we approve, there's boot camps as well. So it's getting a multiplicity of things that can support.
And Robert, do you agree with Aadil about the benefits of online quality learning to give you that?
Yes, I think, I think a really important thing to note is different people learn in different ways. And actually it's trying to make sure that we provide a range of options that allow people to realise their potential. Some of that could be online, some of it is blended, some of it needs to be practical. And it also depends where the individual is in terms of their career journey.
You're sounding very positive that the government has got enough different types of upskilling training, and if not, then you're working on others.
That's what I believe. I believe that there are other fundamental issues in the system that might make the realisation of that potential difficult, such as having the skilled teaching workforce that's needed to deliver it.
And so, Mark, from your side, do you think that the range of courses and offers from different education providers are flexible enough for the workforce that you see?
Well, we train in biomass, where there are not many places who train all aspects of biomass installation. We also do oil and gas. We would like to do heat pumps, but we see no market drag. We don't get installers coming in saying, "Can you train us how to install heat pumps?"
They're all going to
2,000, but that's there are 130,000 gas installers. Used to be 140,000, drifted down a bit in recent years. 200,000 electricians. Some of those electricians will at various times have tried to, and I choose my words carefully, banged in some heat pumps and burnt their fingers, because they're quite difficult, because that's the nature of a heat pump, because it's a low temperature source, even the high temperature ones. You have to be there. You need all of the technical stuff that I've just been through, which if you have a client who wants the product, but not as far as the people who we have to the door every day. Give me my gas safe certificate. Give me my oil ticket.
Thank you, Derek Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, hello. Thank you for your coming along this morning. I want to particularly concern myself with apprenticeships. I did an apprenticeship in the building trade many years ago, and it gave me a good set of skills which I may well need in the near future. I've got the bucket of tools. Actually, I could do this place. But so the government clearly needs to do more to make it easy and attractive for people to take on and offer apprenticeships. The real challenge seems to be, are there enough apprenticeships around, particularly in the small businesses? Would you agree or not?
I just don't see. We work with a number of local colleges to do the practical oil, gas, solid fuel part of it. There are a number of quite complicated environmental apprenticeships and schemes which people come on. But it's and they're happy to go off with their gas safe certificate and go and do provide a decent service to people. We just don't see this call for people, apart from if they're real enthusiasts, and I would give credit there, they are real green enthusiasts. Most of the other 128,000, if you take 130, they just want to do a decent day's work for a decent day's pay. And it's quite interesting work, bit of a challenge, meet different people. That's why they enjoy doing it.
I get that. No, I do get that. I completely get that. And I know lots of people who are young people who did apprenticeships and making a lot of money, as you described. But if we do want to transition or even give householders choice about what heats their home, what more does the government need to do to actually ensure that there are companies that will take on youngsters who actually have lived through recent years where they've become quite aware of how they should and could care for the planet? Is there more the government can do to turn the dial towards youngsters wanting to make that choice?
Well, I'll come out with my bias now, which I'm a great hydrogen man. So if you like, I would say through the GLNOs and things, if you look at going back to the old 67 to 77, 13 million homes, 10 years, we will need a lot more training in that area. But I think just trying to offer more apprentices to get people to take on heat pump courses when there isn't the market pull and the downside of the reputational risk because they've installed that heat pump that didn't work until Geek came to make it work, is all, sorry, grist to my mill there, sort of thing, gently.
Do you feel that hydrogen will, in time, be heating people's homes?
Well, I am, but then you're asking I was the first man to went to see Temple Lake Professor Mackay in 2012, so you're asking the wrong man there.
Okay.
But I mean, I've got a cunning plan that I'm putting to the APPG at 5 o'clock tonight, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, no, I see it, but I've
Geek
heard
and
others.
APPG, okay, this has become a commercial central here.
No, I said the APPG. Oh, sorry, okay. All
I see that, and I hear people supporting that, but I also hear others saying that you wouldn't necessarily take hydrogen to heat homes. But can we, Robert, can I bring you in? So in terms of developing the low carbon heating technician apprenticeship, what was the process for getting there, and is that the solution that Mark is resisting?
The low carbon heating technician took longer to develop than we would have anticipated, and I think it will take it. And I think we learn as we move forwards these sectors, and I think as we work on the edge of deliverable technology, it's actually defining competence. Which is what an apprenticeship is based on. The output standard of an apprenticeship is occupational competence. Getting people to agree what that is, what the scope of an apprenticeship is, should it include digital or shouldn't it, takes quite a lot of time to bring that into a coherent shape. So that is why that took longer than it should have done. I think it's also, but I think that we'll be quicker as we become more familiar with this and we move forwards. I think it's also important to think about the mobilisation of the apprenticeship. So it's not just us approving it, it's colleges developing the detail, bringing the students on board. So you've got to look at it from start to, that it's a systemic, it's a system rather than it's just, we tick it and off it rips. I think that underlines a couple of things that were sort of almost within your previous question. There are definitely things that the government can do and that we're striving to do to improve the availability of apprenticeships for small to medium-sized enterprises, and 70% of this construction sector is SME. And also do things like improve the assessment and make that easier. So those things are happening now, and we're constantly trying to do it. So I think you should view the apprenticeship programme as a mature programme, but one which is now in a stage of continuous improvement, and we're really focused on that. The other two really points I'll make very quickly is it's not just having the product, it's the successful delivery of that product. And I'm the chair of governors at a FE college as well as doing this role, and actually making apprentices stick with apprenticeships, particularly in areas like plumbing where it's a bit of a shock when you actually get some of the realities of that, can be a real challenge. And the final point I'll make, and I don't think it's implicit in the question, I'm just making the point briefly, is the apprenticeship is not the solution to every skills problem. And where we need something more adaptable is where we need to put in a qualification, learn from doing that qualification, and then potentially back engineer that into an existing apprenticeship or create a new one. And the quickest way to get an apprenticeship is to adapt one that exists rather than start from scratch. And of course we started from scratch on the low carbon heating technician. We've adapted the plumbing to allow them to fit heat pumps, to build that in much more quickly, and that illustrates that point.
Do you need the government to be a bit more flexible on the levy then, to enable some of what you've described?
The Institute isn't accountable for the levy. We make funding recommendations, but the government, DFE holds the authority for where it sits. I think there are lots of complexities with the levy, and actually, as it's presented, a simple choice of just simply using it somewhere else rather makes the assumption that apprenticeships aren't going to account for it in its existence. So it isn't necessarily a case of, if you do more with it, you do less with it somewhere else potentially.
Well, okay, I get it. So Aadil, can I just pick up on that point? So colleges are doing a great job of putting these courses together, but actually unless you have the SMEs, the small builders that are prepared, particularly the smaller companies in rural areas such as I represent, that will take on people who want to do an apprenticeship and then work with the colleges and see that to completion so they're occupationally competent. Is that how do you address that with what you do? And then as a precursor to that, are T levels a helpful direction of travel for young people?
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. I'd say the problem is even more stark than you put it. Over 95% of the industry where a homeowner can change their heating system, kind of almost irrespective of technology, let's put that to one side for a second, is with micro-organizations. We kind of have a brand association with some of the larger companies, but they really account for very few of the actual 1.7 million heating system installs that happen a year. And so, you have to kind of turn the problem on its head, in our opinion. If we focus on the businesses that are pulling for the apprentices or T-level entrants, i.e. new entrants into the market, if you give them tooling, training, technologies, governance systems, all of the required things to make them successful in whichever technology route you want to go, again, maybe personal bias towards heat pumps for us, that will create the pull from the colleges in. That will create folks that we meet all the time, new entrants into the industry, people who are programmers saying, actually, I want to do something about this climate crisis, I'd love to enter the market. But we have to have employers, we have to have small businesses embedded in communities, supported by government, yes, but also commercial enterprises like ourselves, to easily come into this market, do the more complex things easily, and earn more money and grow their businesses. That is fundamentally the task. Yep. And almost like the education pathways that come into that are a secondary result of that core objective.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark Posey.
Thank you, Chair. Aadil, I'd like to thank you for introducing us to a new term, the time off the tools, which I think we know and understand what you mean, but it's one I haven't put in this succinct, and it's a problem not just this sector, British business generally suffers from. And I was on the business committee when entrepreneurs were being encouraged to enhance their own skills, and many of them would say, I can't do that because I haven't got time, I'm too busy running the business, I've got my head stuck in this. And we've got the same issue here, which is that how do we encourage people to put down their tools, not work for days or a week in order to get the new skills to deliver this. Now, you gave us an alternative, which was digital learning. Is that the solution?
I think it's a solution. I want to be really clear that our target market, if you like, or our contribution to this challenge is existing NVQ level 2 plus engineers who have had 5, 10, 15 years of experience on the tools. Whatever you think of heat...
And are these currently gas engineers?
Correct. And there's an interesting quirk that I learned as I entered this market. Even for an engineer that wants to install a heat pump and turn the gas off, one must have a gas safe certificate in order to do so. And so there is no challenge, it's not a binary choice between the gas route and the electrification route. In fact, in order to support our communities through the S-curve of adoption, this technology transition that we will go through, we need people to be able to continue to service, maintain and support those gas systems, those combi systems that Mark pointed out, and we fully support our engineers in doing so. We just focus and help them on the new stuff, i.e. the heat pumps, the low temperature solutions, the highly efficient designs that enable them to save their homeowners money. And so we've proven that through our training, we can take existing experienced gas engineers into a world of heat pumps and not only have them be able to install the systems, but do so incredibly well and at a very high efficiency level that unlocks a saving for the homeowner, a fiscal saving, not just a carbon saving, and lessens the impact on the grid.
So you're helping the homeowner get better off, but how are you helping the installer get better off? Because are you enabling him to get that learning without needing to take time off the tools?
Precisely. The system that we use is a self-paced online system. It's used across industries, from medicine all the way through to technology, and it enables participants to sign up to the course, take their time. They pay a monthly fee. It's a very small fee, actually, not something that we're aiming to make a huge amount of money from, but gives them the ability to dip into the research and the knowledge, understand, learn, do online testing, but crucially be paired with a peer community of learners across the country and in this peer-to-peer manner get access to a community that is far larger than those that they would maybe meet on a course college.
Does the fact that they're going to grow their business, enhance their skills and provide themselves with continuity of employment, is that sufficient of an incentive, or does it need something like the heat training grant which the government have provided, which is a discount of up to £500 towards the cost of heat pump training?
We have been beneficiaries of prior grants under the Bayes old world, and it did help. It was a pull through. Frankly, our engineers who do our training can now sell, after they've done that certification, can sell their services at a premium to the current market. And as a result, that sort of fiscal incentive, I would say, cuts through any green incentive. Our engineers are making more money and have a better business as a result of upskilling, training, and being able to do highly efficient systems. This is the key.
Robert, do you get a sense of what Aadil's talking about, that the self-interest in upskilling is more important to this workforce than £500 from the government to do the right thing?
It's difficult for me to judge whether it's £500 or £1,000 or whatever. I think and I think the true answer is that we need to have a combination of factors. I think there might be one factor that's dominant for a particular individual, but another factor that stimulates somebody else. But a lot of learning is self-driven, and I think it's really important as we go forwards that and that's one of the benefits of an apprenticeship, is it really encourages a lifelong learning approach. It instills that in people. So I think there's a cultural bit to this as well as the hard skills.
And is this workforce one that's used to continuous improvement? Isn't it one that's done its qualifications, got it, and feels it's got the right to carry on doing that for the rest of their working career? Is there a culture here of ongoing development?
I'm now relaying this from my personal experience as a customer of these, people who are working in these type of trades. I think certainly the plumbing trade, which is where we're going now, there's been quite I think it's constantly evolving and developing, and I think people are constantly acquiring, whether you move from lead piping to copper piping to plastic piping, it is an industry which is constantly moving and developing, and for us it's important that we keep up with that and make sure that the qualifications that we approve actually reflect those changes in techniques and the modernism that they reflect.
Yeah, and Mark, you told us there were 140,000 gas installers that's fallen to 130. That figure's going to decline over time. How do you feel about these people that you represent right now drifting over to electricians installing heat pumps?
Electricians installing heat pumps is not a good thing. They nearly always end in tears unless they've had a training with somebody like the Geek, but they go out and that. As far as gas, yes, many of the heat systems that have been put in, the heat emitters, the radiators are all there already. They're copper. They're probably good for a few more years yet. So the drift down doesn't worry too much, and you can change your combi boiler quite quickly. So if we're trying to decarbonise the UK, that will have to grow, but that will have to grow from a sort of government policy decarbonisation route. I don't think that a few training courses are going to wave the magic bullet there. There are already, as I said, people who we take through every day, young people who work for on apprentices and different deals and things. There's a wide range of those nowadays. That's not the issue. We're going to decarbonise by 2050. The problem is more complicated than that. And
you mentioned that you're an advocate for hydrogen and the use of hydrogen in home heating. Do you think there's a dash for heat pumps that we're trying to encourage our gas installers to retrain as heat pumps, but whilst the door remains open to continuing to use gas in our heating network, and we train those guys onto heat pumps at our peril, because we then may not have enough people to deal with the hydrogen transition?
No, because there isn't the market pull for the heat pumps. You see what I mean? And a little bit like converting from natural. Your core skill is in natural gas. You can do an LPG changeover course in 5 days. You do a hydrogen changeover course in 5 days. That's not the problem. It's more a matter of which way is the ship heading. Clearly, it won't be all things to all men sort of thing. And it's that planning or not planning which is the hard bit that we have to get to grips with.
So you're not bothered about this 130,000 people morphing into other skills, and that we may not have the people.
No,
to do
because if the money's there, they'll come back again. I mean, that's what they're
it's as easy as that.
Honestly, I mean, provided you've got your original core skill, if the money's there, and the driver at the moment is that will. I'm not worried about that.
Okay. Robert, you want to just come in quickly? The chairman's looking at me.
There is definitely a labour supply challenge here, which I think is what you're pointing to, and I think more people need to be attracted into this sector as a whole. It's not just retraining, it's a significant uplift in the number of people that commit themselves to employment in this area, or we will not achieve the targets. I think the government's or the Green Skills Delivery Group's Green Jobs Plan will bring this to life and really bring to the fore the challenge that we've got in this space. Just another quick comment related to that is in our college we've set up a net zero skills centre. We're at to try and support people in these type of skills. We're now having to draw back from that because there's not the demand for people to come through it. So we were ahead of the delivery time, and I can give you more details offline about that if you'd like it.
Thank you. Dan Poulter.
Just following up on that quickly, there's always a tension in any industry between workforce competence and having competencies to perform tasks and qualifications, if you like, paper or qualifications. And how do you see that?
We focus on competence, so that is the primary outcome. But we do understand that qualifications are an important indication of that. So actually we accommodate qualifications within apprenticeships. We are working very hard to align the apprenticeship checkout event with the achievement of professional qualifications, so they become integrated, so there's a single assessment rather than multiple assessments going on. And of course we've got qualifications which can allow you to acquire that sort of top-up element that you might want to be a registered heat pump installer or whatever. So it's a blend of solutions, but I think both are important.
Something to add to that, or we just Mr. Qureshi first, and then Mr. Crowther.
Yeah, I think per the regulations in this country at this point in time, in order to and just to address what Mark said earlier as well, adding the ability to put a low carbon solution to your suite of skills is not a precursor to abandoning what you're currently doing. And if your existing customer base still has a gas kind of platform, you'll need to help them. And so going back to the importance of qualifications, right now you just need a gas safe certificate and the ability to demonstrate various qualifications like MVQ, etc., which are the existing qualifications. The company that you work for needs to be certified under the MCS and various other renewable energy codes, etc. And so, we've kind of determined that the idea of a net new workforce is, I feel, a little far-fetched. These are businesses, small businesses that are embedded in the community today, are serving those communities, heating their homes, keeping them warm. It's just about adding a skill to their bow, or an additional string to their bow, rather than a net new suite of people that are going to come in because suddenly all these engineers are going to retire or vanish into thin air.
That's very helpful. I'm going to come back to that in a second, if that's all right, Mr. Crowther.
Go back to it. It's all will be led by what the demand is. So I mean, in terms of gas, that we have very rigorous safety levels. What the gas industry is involved in less fatalities per year than struck by lightning. It's about 2 fatalities per year. So I mean, that's the pipe gas industry. So I mean, in a sense, we've solved that one. It's really more and these people, they may not quite have the skills to do some of the design aspects of heat pumps, and certainly the off-the-shelf qualifications which you can do in some colleges for a heat pump will not give you those additional design skills because of these difficult balances they are between. Do I have a buffer tank? How big is the domestic water tank? Do I fit TRVs? No, I not fit TRVs. All of which requires the installer to take judgments about which the householder can come back and will complain if they want to. Hence the issues about the anecdotal poor installations and things. And the answers there are very difficult because that will cost the consumer additional money, and if they won't pay, and then you don't get the optimum solution, do you walk away, or does the householder say it's all right, I understand, except they don't when push comes to shove? So all that's just difficult.
I'm going to come to back picking up on something that Mr. Qureshi, you mentioned a moment ago. Now, we're expecting a net zero and nature workforce plan this year. And could you identify, and then I'll come to the other two witnesses in a moment, could you identify what your one priority would be for that? And I imagine you're slightly sceptical of such a plan from your previous answer.
Across the various industries that need to decarbonise, there is a huge amount that needs to be done. There is an absolute recognition of a skills gap. Let me put that first. The subtlety is if one tries to optimise for the speed with which we are going to get those skills into a workforce embedded on the ground inside the communities that need to adopt those, the outcomes of those skills. When it comes to residential decarbonisation, it's our strong belief that a large proportion of the pull factor, both to advise homeowners and to then support those homeowners on their decarbonisation journey through a variety of technologies, most likely to be heat pumps in our opinion, that will come from the existing industry. Whilst it is 130,000 today, various predictions say we need about 60,000 in order to achieve the Committee on Climate Change targets for the adoption rates that we need to hit to get to net zero. But the idea of that entire workforce being completely turned over and not being the same small businesses perhaps handed down to the apprentices that Robert and his colleagues are producing today seems incredulous to us, and it is not reflective of any other technology transition that any society has ever gone through. It always comes from within the existing capability and a movement of that existing workforce to the new way, which in our, again, demonstrated opinion and capability can be delivered with a light touch, scalable, digital first approach for existing engineers who already know how to connect pipes, drill through walls, make the home clean and tidy after they've done their physical work.
Thank you very much. I think that it's fundamentally systemic in its approach, and that is both in its recommendations and also the response that it elicits. And I would say, as a footnote to that, that it recognises, or that we recognise what technical education can offer to take this forwards. And the technical education offer isn't just in the tools department. It can be in lots of other places, such as training the individuals that are needed to make retrofit work, such as the Retrofit Coordinator standard that we're about to publish.
Very quickly, I agree with much of what Aadil said. I think my only issue is that if you train it and then unless you use it, you lose it. And if you're not doing enough installations, you will quickly, particularly as a lot of this is elements of judgment, if you're not practicing, and so you need to take forward, we need to up the number of heat pumps from the 60,000 a year or 63,000 or whatever it is, because if you think across 130,000 installs, that'd be only half a heat pump per year. Well, you're not going to learn much from only doing half a heat pump installation. In fact, if you get it wrong, well, that's another reason for you. I'm not going to install another one of those. I mean, that cost me a lot of money, sort of thing. And already that, if you like, that's the mindset of a large number of these gas installers who have tried to install heat pumps and not done well.
My last question, I suppose, is we've talked about sort of high-level policy around workforce and some of the issues to do with that. But if you wanted then to actually take that down to better coordinating workforce skills development and planning that at a more local level, how do you think that might be achieved?
Yeah, I mean, we already operate on a community basis. We have folks in our industry and in our network who have done tens and tens and tens of heat pump installs. They are the most experienced, and we enable and empower them to be community leaders, connecting to other folks who, as a result of this demand and supply kind of mismatch, not competing with, and as a result can coach and mentor. And we believe deeply in the idea of peer-to-peer being a vehicle for that skill sharing, knowledge sharing, and also all of the business aspects that Mark's touching on a few times. You know, if you speak to someone who's done 30 successful heat pump installs, you will understand and learn from that experience. So at a local level, I think, how that's coordinated is a point of ideation, but certainly empowering those who are succeeding in this way to connect with those who are interested, and then you get a momentum building and a kind of viral effect of the successful ones helping the ones who are coming into that market next.
A couple of just 30
Time,
seconds.
I'm sorry. Time is pushing us. I'm sorry.
National, local, really important, need to work together, and we're certainly working with metro mayors to try and stimulate in their areas.
Okay. Next, Alexander Stafford, and if you're efficient and skilled with time, I can get in Barry Gardner at the end.
Yes,
thank you.
I'll be very efficient, very quick. Thank you, Ciaran. Thank you for all of you three for your conversation. Just looking at some of the government's role and the standard bodies, are the standards bodies working in a correct and an efficient way when it comes to these new installations? Robert, what's your dealing with them, and how have you felt about them?
We are very grateful for some of the support from standards bodies that we've had to help us develop the standards. So I think they've contributed. I think the challenge that we would always feel with that is that they're prepared to entertain new ways of thinking and adapt and evolve, and that previous considerations don't become a constraint on innovation, actually that they are prepared to look at that. And sometimes that can be difficult when funding is linked to that for their own organisations.
Are the standing bodies willing to look at new ways of working, new efficiency, or are they getting a collapse in morass or bureaucracy of this new technology?
Varies. I mean, to be completely frank, it varies, but we've had some great help to do that, and I think stimulating that freedom of thought is really important, not overcooking the training of people that fit electric vehicle charging points, for example.
Because obviously what we want to do is to unlock this technology and get more people to install these policies and actually get the consumer, but then also there's that risk. We want to make sure consumers are protected. Right. How have the standard bodies in the government dealt with that sort of fine balance?
Yeah, I think it's a really important interplay that hasn't been mentioned thus far, is that compliance-based training in order to unlock the ability to participate in what is a subsidised market is, generally speaking, not a good plan. That is what we have experienced thus far. I think those standards bodies that Robert mentioned are definitely listening. We have experienced folks in our network going on the mandatory training required in order to be MCS compliant, as an example, and leaving the training saying, I learnt nothing, and in fact, I was taught the wrong stuff. And that is the worst horror story. That's not to say that can't be changed and fixed, and I think those folks are really looking into this. I'll come back again to my points of really embracing the new means to focus on alternative delivery methods, to focus on outcomes of installs and outcomes of the training as a measure.
Just sort of picking up on that, so you're saying some of the standards bodies are more focused on like almost a piece of paper saying you're fine, rather than actually the skills and the competencies. And is this what you're seeing across all the standards bodies, or just a few ones, would you say?
I wouldn't make sweeping statements. I think that is the constant risk, is that capability and competence is the most important thing, that we want to protect taxpayers' money going into the system, not compliance and box ticking. And having a QMS system in place in your business proves nothing about the quality and the standard of your heat pump install, as a simple example.
Robert, do you want to focus on that sort of box ticking versus skills, competencies, tension?
We're really interested in competence. That's what we judge things by, and we are resistant to try to embodying qualifications that create monopolies or don't allow broad delivery.
I can't really add very much to I mean, we don't have any IGEM, which is the standard setting body in the gas industry. No problem with hydrogen. All works very smoothly. All push. I mean, yeah, not an issue.
And on the piece about sort of after installation, does the government and the standard bodies and even your sectors give the consumer the skills and education to actually maintain the kit they're installed? Because I think obviously with new technology, people want it to work and it will go wrong, there will be problems, even most basic maintenance to keep things. do your engineers, do the way you work, do the body allow consumers to have those sort of skills, or is that a piece missing?
Yeah, I think unlike my former industry, the heating industry is not one where consumers are excited perhaps by the idea of tweaking their system or keeping the warranty up to date through servicing. And I think it's beholden on the commercial sector, particularly the manufacturers, the installers, and then the related parties, to make it set and forget. You know, the homeowners should not have to worry about how they interact or interface with these things, particularly on any technical level. This thing needs to fade into the background, keep them warm, keep their home comfortable, and they shouldn't have to think about it any further.
In the nicest possible way, you would say that, wouldn't you? Because you want the engineers to come out and fix it when it goes wrong. Well, but I'm more looking at the consumer at the home who can do the little fixes themselves.
Sure. I mean, you know, servicing and callbacks as a business model is a very poor one. Like, that should not be the core focus, and frankly we don't make any money on that transaction, so that's not the reason for saying it. The reason for saying it is consumer adoption, moving now away from the supply side of the market to the demand side of the market. Consumer adoption is based on beautiful, intuitive, simple experiences. It's not based on the early geeks, even saying that as the CEO of Geek, who are deeply engaged with their heating system. And although we love those early adopters, if we want mass scale, my mum, frankly, does not want to be playing with the heating system after it's installed to keep it running.
I think it's really important that this is what I mean by a systemic approach, that we also build the customer support, the system management muscle mass to make sure that these technologies are supported. And I'm not saying we've got the solution to everything, but this is why we're really focused on things like the community energy specialist, which is a standard that we're about to release, the junior energy manager, about trying to make sure that we've got this sort of slightly more cerebral element of it, supporting the practical delivery.
Yeah, just last thing, obviously, Mark, going back to touching on Mr. Qureshi's point, but I like your opinion on it. Although we don't necessarily want the consumer, they want to sort of be able to fix or just forgive and forget, is a lot of this down to consumer confidence? And if the consumer is worried there's a bit of tech that might go wrong, even if they all probably won't go wrong, if you think you have some least basic knowledge and skills of being able to tweak it, you're more likely to adopt technology. Is that what you think, Mark, or what's your opinion?
Not particularly. I think, not particularly. I mean, they'll install it because they have a certain faith in it, but they're not going to install it or not install it. More concerning is if you're on prepayment meter and things, then you really do learn about your heating system, and that's not a happy message, especially if you're, that adds quite a lot of complication. You'll understand, if your car doesn't last very long, you'll want to make sure as to which part of the house you want to heat, and you have to be careful that we don't begin to live in a bubble here which is completely dissociated from people who are self-disconnecting and things.
Thank you. Barry Garner, you've been very patient, and a couple of minutes at the end for you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Crowther, I guess that if there were three hats in the room, one of which was labelled the visionary, one of which was labelled the technocrat, and one of which was labelled the pragmatist, you would probably pick up the pragmatist hat from what you've said.
That was a good option.
You've tried to take us into the mind of a gas installer thinking about the transition to installing heat pumps. And in a sort of avuncular, perhaps slightly curmudgeonly way, you've poo-pooed the idea that this might be something that they can do whilst maintaining their livelihood at the level that they want to. And you said something which was, we need to make it simpler. But you haven't told us how. Now, this committee is about solutions. It's about putting a report to government that will actually make recommendations. There's no point in you telling us, oh, it's all very difficult. Please tell us, how do we make it simpler?
We repeat what we did in 67 to 77, 13 million homes, 40 million appliances, 10 years, organised by the GDOs. Government fund the big pipes, just like we build the Elizabeth line. People come, so they have faith. You build the pipes, the molecules come, people have faith, job done.
Are you happy with that, Mr. Gardner?
Oh, no, I'm not.
I didn't think you would be, and I'm happy to indulge you further.
What you've given me is not, with respect, a pragmatic solution.
That's really...
If I'm trying to get your gas installers to retrain as heat pump installers, how am I going to make their lives simpler to do it? Do I say to them, okay, look, government will pay you 1 day a week of your wages to do that retraining?
No, because it's just very complicated. Because obviously the Heat Geek are good people. They've got 2,000 people who are really enthusiasts, want to do it. Fantastic. The average gas engineer is not.
Would you want your engineers to do this? Would you want your engineers to do what Mr. Gardner's suggesting?
It's going to be very hard for some of them, really hard.
But would you want them hard or not? Would you want them to be doing this?
I wouldn't, but that's Mark Crowther's prejudice, because I'd rather go down the hydrogen route. I mean, that's sorry to be blunt about it. That's what because I think, it's been shown to the Isle of Man did it 2009, 2012, quite recently, went from Towns gas to natural gas.
Yeah, but going to hydrogen's a different proposition. But let's not go down that particular route, because we're trying to provide a solution to this problem. So you've said you need to make it simpler for your gas installer to make the transition. What would make it simpler?
It would have to be to provide more guidance on the design of the system, which is what Aadil's been trying to do. So therefore helping them, when the householder says, do I need a buffer tank against TRVs, it will be to generally, technically, I won't say computer programs, because there are already lots of heat pump design programs, but it is somehow giving that engineer that knowledge and confidence to be able to install quite a difficult task. In fact, compared to fitting a gas boiler going to the moon sort of thing, really trying to do aeronautical engineering for a gas engineer is quite difficult. They're good guys, they're wonderful at what they're doing, but it almost requires, in many instances, quite a different level of skill. And whether or not mama and papa companies necessarily have that level of skill is again another challenge. But that's really hard.
I'll make it super brief. I come from a white-collar background. I was university educated. I worked in tech for 20 years before I chose this mission, because I tried to get a heat pump and it was a nightmare, and it needs fixing, and it's lots of things broken. My co-founder, Adam, is a heating engineer from birth, basically. Came out with a press gun in his hand, and has shown me that we label and generalize and underestimate this engineering community at our peril. And I would encourage members, be happy to make introductions, to speak with the engineers, to learn how they come into this industry and why that 2,000 that I mentioned is only in the last couple of years. We have big plans, and it's not just us, other colleagues, Octopus, Era, others, working on exactly the same challenge. These engineers are enthusiastic, they are highly technically capable, with a little bit of support from some digital tech, with flexible learning programs, and with a focus on the small to medium businesses in the heart of the communities. They can do two roles. One, complete installations, but two, help homeowners to navigate what is a fairly challenging decision. And I think fundamentally it's about the engineers, and they are the answer to this.
Thank you. We've overrun, but it was interesting. And thank you all, Mark Crowther, Robert Nitsch and Aadil Qureshi, for coming in. And we'll switch over to the next panel as soon as we can. Thank you all. Won't suspend. No, just keep the cameras rolling, as they say.
When they used to have. When they used to have us alive. We used to down the pit in the middle.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Good morning. Thank you.
Over there, mate. They filled in the pit, didn't they?
Yeah.
Hi, yeah.
Grand. thank you for the quick transition. I'll ask the second panel to introduce themselves. Name, rank and serial number and which county you're from in Ireland.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Kieran Byrne. I work for the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, which is the energy agency in Ireland, and I am the Director of National Retrofit. My role is to oversee the National Residential Retrofit Programme, so it leans into all parts of the sector and ensure that we achieve our targets. County Dublin.
County Limerick.
Dublin.
Dublin. Good at football, but not at hurling.
Rugby.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Good morning, I'm Jenny Curtis. I'm the Managing Director for Vattenfall Heat in the UK. Vattenfall is a energy utility company owned by the Swedish government. We operate and develop heat networks both in the UK but also established networks in the Netherlands, Germany and Sweden.
Easy.
Adrian, Joyce, Secretary General of EuroACE Energy Efficient Buildings, Campaign Director of Renovate Europe, an architect by training, I think that's pertinent, and Professor of Architecture in a Belgian university on part-time basis. Born in Dublin, family home in Wicklow.
Oh, okay.
The Mountains, what we call mountains.
The Wicklow Mountains were at least 50% Irish so far. Kieran Sinclair must be Scottish in background.
Yeah, born in Glasgow. Kieran Sinclair, Principal Energy Policy Advisor at the Danish Embassy here in London. I work on the Energy Governance Partnership, which is a Danish programme of intergovernmental cooperation, which varies from country to country, but in the UK is mostly focused on heat decarbonisation as the area with which we have most to share.
Thank you. Anyway, put an international focus on this second panel. What countries should the UK look to emulate for its home heating transition, do you think?
I think in the Nordics it really goes to show how district heating can be widely rolled out and accepted and support consumers and customers in accessing low carbon heat.
And district heating happened in the UK because some of our panel have been to Denmark in the last week. Not all of us, unfortunately, parliamentary got in the way last week, but can it roll out here?
Absolutely. I think actually there's a real opportunity for the UK to become a market leader in district heating. The government policy is very much moving in the right direction in terms of the introduction of the zoning framework through the energy bill, and I think that will provide the demand assurance that investors need in order to roll out district heating in urban areas. I mean, it is very much about the right technology in the right place. It won't work everywhere, but there is a real opportunity using the experience of those international examples to do it in the UK at pace and speed, and to take advantage of particularly technological innovation, the ability that we have in the UK to, for example, include smart meters from the get-go in terms of how we roll out networks, and to access sources of waste heat, which means that we can provide low-cost, low-carbon heat here.
In some places, heat pumps, as you know, and domestic heat pumps are an issue. I'm told there are certain counties, or councils, I should say, in England that have declared a climate emergency, but won't give out a heat pump, or can't give out a heat pump, if the heat pump volume externally is more than 0.6 of a metre cubed. That seems to be changing. Have you come across any other similar restriction in other countries to that?
Sorry, in terms of the ability to
the volume of to get planning for if the heat pump is external volume, so it's greater than 0.6 of a metre cubed, it needs planning, and then becomes a whole issue and a problem and is frequently refused. Have you come across that in any other European country? Well, the non-technological, if you like, but the bureaucratic's getting in the way.
I think in the countries that we're operating in, there is a very supportive planning policy for district heating, and planning is absolutely critical both in the UK and abroad. As I say, it is right technology, right place, so it does depend on the fabric of the urban infrastructure and the particular buildings.
Adrian, Joyce, I mean, are countries more successful generally when they're guided by a single national plan for decarbonising homes, or when adopting a mosaic of approaches supported by a more flexible national funding programme? I mean, I'm looking at France, who've got 12 times the output of heat pumps to the UK, but they've got a central one-stop shop. In the UK, it seems like there's just a killer of choice and potential domestic arguments of what type of pump we're going for, what make choices we're going to have. I mean, thoughts?
Well, I think you've said a few key points there. National building renovation plans or decarbonisation plans, one-stop shops, bringing information and help and advice to homeowners is a really crucial tool in the transition to a decarbonised heating for homes. But from my seat, I wanted to bring to the committee the message that looking at the demand side is really important, not just the supply side or the technology side. And there's a great deal of good work that can be done by reducing the amount of energy needed to heat our homes. And I would like to say that it can't be reduced to a technological or an energy carrier question, because I'd like to help you recall, why do we need to heat our homes? It's because we live in them and we work in them. And you've got to think about the person and the interaction between the people and the environment in which they are living and working. And in order to have a really comfortable building, then it has to have good insulation, so there are no cold surfaces radiating cool. It has to have good technology, and that technology has to be well controlled. And digitalization is a key element moving forward. And I wanted to bring an old warning to the committee as well, which is
like warnings. Thank you.
When I was an architecture student, we used to talk about insulate tight, ventilate right. And ventilation is often overlooked in the regulations across Europe, indeed in the UK. And you can't really expect to take a building that's been open to drafts and seal it up and expect no problems later. Because we each emit a huge amount of water vapor every day, drying clothes, washing, etc. Mm-hmm. So a message is multiple measures must always be rolled out together. And so schemes that incentivize one element over another, be it a passive element like insulation or new windows, or an active element like a heat pump or other control systems, it's not usually going to work out. It is this integrated or holistic approach that's really very important. And the technologies and the products exist on the market today for all countries in Europe, including the UK, to get at least a 50% and often 60 or 70% reduction in the number of kilowatt hours you need, making it much easier for the system, the energy system, whether it's electricity or a heat circuit, to deliver the heat to the buildings moving forward. So I would urge the committee to think about what you can do on the demand side to make it easier in the future. And we talked about simplification.
Kieran, a minute each. Any thoughts on this?
Yes, well, I suppose having not met the panel members before, I'm in violent agreement with them, because one of the things Aidan just alluded to is, from our perspective...
the idea of violent agreement.
Yeah, it's great of a Wednesday morning, but it's this idea of fabric first, and we advocate the fabric first, and we lean into the European directive. So we have the Energy Efficiency Directive, so it nominally says, whatever you're using, use less of it, and then we supplement that with renewables, which would be heat pump and decarbonisation. So we would certainly, in our policies and in our schemes, we'd lean into the fabric first approach and support the development of heat pumps. To the point Jenny was making as well, we're rolling out in Ireland district heating. We're nowhere near the level of penetration of the Nordic countries and Denmark and places like that, but we see a role for district heating in urban areas to kind of get that efficiency level up in terms of how we heat homes going forward.
Fascinating, thank you. Kieran, Sinclair.
So Denmark's heat decarbonisation journey is primarily around district heating. It's around 70% of heat, looking to go up to 80%. So that's basically all urban areas, and it has been supported by quite...
The other 20% do in Denmark?
So the other 20% at the moment is a mix of gas and heat pumps and occasional biomass boilers. They'll mostly be moving towards heat pumps individually.
Would there be any oil central heating in rural areas, kerosene central heating?
There's a bit. I think it's broadly similar to the UK, with the exception that the building fabric in rural areas is significantly better, so it's easier to move to heat pumps.
Thank you. I'll move over to Mark Garnier next.
Thank you, Kieran. Perhaps if I can start with you. And obviously you and I spent a couple of days last week when two of us here and two more came and visited Denmark and Copenhagen and had a look at the heat pump networks and the cool pump networks, district cool networks. You're a citizen of the United Kingdom and also working with the Danish embassy. One thing that I came away with was the extraordinary progress that Denmark is making in terms of decarbonisation and actually the economic growth that goes with that. Also, the organisation State of Green is an organisation which seems to be there to promote it. I came back slightly thinking that we're in the Stone Age compared with Denmark, and in fact many other countries are. Kieran, as a UK citizen and an advisor to Denmark, what do you think?
Stone Age or not?
Not necessarily in the Stone Age, but I certainly think that if we look at the Danish pathway, there's a lot that we can follow there. I mean, the key thing that really pushed Denmark down this route was the oil crisis, which led to the need to have dispersed and diversified generation of electricity, and then using the heat from that through combined heat and power to also heat buildings. So you can kind of double dip on generation. And what happened after that was because the combined heat and power plants were able to generate revenue, they were able to help pay for all of the pipe work that you saw when you were there. And what that means is that afterwards you can then change the energy centres, which is one of the great things about heat networks. The pipe work and the interface with the building stays the same, but you can actually change the energy centres from gas to potentially heat pumps, biomass, or energy from waste. But the revenue from that CHP let us pay for the pipes, and then now we're decarbonising, so it's about 70% from renewables at the moment.
If I could turn to you, one of the interesting things was sitting in a tunnel underneath Copenhagen where they're providing heat for, I think it's in the hundreds of thousands of houses. I did a very basic sort of calculation on the cost of that tunnel, and if you had spent that money on the subsidy that goes into heat pumps in the UK, that would have provided heat for 16,000 homes, whereas this was providing heat for, I think, 160 or 200,000 homes. The government is obviously putting in £7,500 subsidy per heat pump. Given that, in a lot of parts of London, for example, or any cities, there's quite closely knit communities, would that money be far better spent on investing into the infrastructure that you're doing in terms of those district heat networks?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are places where heat pumps is the right solution, which is not in the dense urban areas. But in cities, it is likely that district heating will be the lowest cost, lowest carbon solution for that area. And that is what the local authorities are working with DESNZ through the feasibility studies to implement zoning in the UK, which we think is absolutely the
and they're
right
being responsive.
solution.
I mean, you're finding the government is awake.
We are. I think it's a complicated piece of policy. What we really need is better clarity on the demand assurance that it will provide for investors, because heat networks are long-term complex pieces of infrastructure which require material upfront investment. I mean, the government policy is to move from 2% of the UK on district heat networks to 20% by 2050. That's looking at a 60 to 80 billion pounds worth of investment. And there are investors that are ready, like ourselves and other institutional investors, ready to stand to make that investment. I mean, in the Nordics, district heating is very much a very popular asset class for investors. But what you need is the certainty of demand. And that comes from both new build, where I think we're in a good place in terms of mandating connections for new buildings. We already actually have that, where Vattenfall's working in Bristol in partnership with Bristol City Leap, but also crucially retrofit. And the retrofit market is much more challenging, because we need to be able to provide a positive economic rationale to those existing building owners to switch from a gas boiler to a district heating connection.
Is it not just a lot simpler, though? Presumably you're just putting a heat exchanger, so you pipe in hot water, go through a heat exchanger, and out comes cold water. Isn't that just a hell of... if you take the average sort of leafy Clapham terrace, terraces of houses, isn't it just a lot easier to do that than it is to muck around with heat pumps?
It is, although we do have to make buildings heat network ready, and it is important that I think that district heating is positioned alongside, fabric first type interventions in terms of the building fabric to allow us to provide lower temperature heat, which is really what we need to do to be most efficient and to be able to access the sources of waste heat, the heat that's already here in our environment from things like data centres, mine water, sewage waste heat, which is ultimately where you get the carbon savings.
Just again, another Kieran, just finally, can you share with us any examples of where government support schemes in other countries have successfully encouraged the uptakes of low carbon heating and energy efficiency measures?
I suppose the closest one to home would be our own, and we have a significant grant programme for the rollout of heat pumps themselves, and we're on the early adoption phase of that curve. But we would also look to Europe and come to Danish countries as well, and places like Holland, where they have a very extensive heat pump programme and hybrid heat pump programme. But as Jenny had said, it's anticipated in the Irish context it's going to blend in with a developing district heating network, because you're looking at where can we use heat pumps, where should we use heat pumps, and where should we use district heating. So we're doing a fairly significant amount of rollout in relation to heat pumps at the present point in time.
And Jenny, just one last question really for you, because obviously you come from a Nordic, your company comes from a Nordic background. One of the things I was very impressed with in Denmark was the organisation State of Green, which is there to sort of promote and educate and do this. Do other Nordic countries have that? And if you were to bring something like that here to the UK, how do you think that would be run?
I think district heating, because it is so much more part of the fabric of these existing countries, it's taken as a given. Here we have a massive educational challenge because nobody's ever heard of district heating. Yeah. When I try and explain to people what I do, I end up saying I work in renewables, which is not really even true. So it's, we do need to get the narrative right and to provide these clear technology pathways to explain to the general public as to the options that there are and the advantages of those options.
That's what an organisation like State of Green would do if you had something like
and
that.
I'm not familiar with them in particular.
Kieran, what do you think? Should we have something like this in the UK?
Yeah, we should, and I think the government's receptive to that idea. We just haven't quite got there yet. But yeah, we also have the Danish Energy Agency, which provides kind of technical expertise, and we have a sort of website / marketing program called Spar Energy, which basically just means energy savings, which provides consumer information on heat pumps, energy efficiency, heat networks, how they all fit together and what choices they have to make. But all of that put together means that the average Danish consumer is very happy to be on a heat network. During the gas price crisis, when gas prices were very high, people were knocking down the doors of heat network developers to get connections, which is obviously a great place to be.
Adrian, do you want to add anything to any of that?
No, I don't know, I'm not an expert on district heating, but I'm a fan of it when it's a suitable technology. But I wouldn't mind touching on the question I think the chair asked about, is the UK in the Stone Age? Definitely not.
Yeah, that was me.
That was you.
Yeah.
No,
he's far too polite about the government.
Definitely not. Yeah. But there are moments in time when curious decisions are made, and it looks from abroad that some of those decisions are party politically driven. And that is another kind of warning I wanted to give, is that the topic we talk about, which is efficient buildings, should not be a party political issue.
No, you're saying you're observing culture wars with types of domestic heating. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're taking culture wars between different sides of the
political divide.
Yeah,
yes. Using the green transition as a political football, and this I would advise
we've
against.
observed that too, and I'm just
it's a cross-party committee, so I think I can fairly say that, and it's a good thing to be talking together across parties, because what we are asking for is good across the political spectrum. For the environment, for society, for the economy. I represent industry, and our industries are asking for more and more ambition in the political framework to support a long-term, stable, clear demand for energy-efficient technologies moving forward, to bring down the demand, as I said in my first words, so that it's easier to supply that demand with renewables.
Just on that very specific point, and then I'll hand back. These massive arguments that have been going on, obviously we've got a general election coming up, which I suspect is going to be quite ugly. These massive arguments going on about £28 billion U-turns and who's doing what and all this kind of stuff. This is creating uncertainty.
Correct.
And one of the interesting points was we had some energy suppliers in the other day, and I was asking them, and obviously they're under a lot of attack because of the fact that they are making super profits. But one of the interesting things was that the political narrative here means that their credit rating is lower here than it would be elsewhere, and it means the cost of capital is that much higher. This is all bad things. It's not that the chairman wants me to.
Excellent, thank you very much. That was fascinating. I didn't quite grasp that the district heating would be such a real possibility in the UK and cheaper on aggregate than heat pumps. And I'm sure heat pumps have been used with district heating as well. Barry Gardner, you've been patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Curtis, I think I heard you say UK can become a real leader in domestic heating. I wanted to ask you about low carbon heat technologies like heat pumps, where we have, I think, 1% rollout in the UK compared with 60% in Norway, 40% in Sweden and Finland. I mean, my God, if we're going to be a real leader, what would you say if you were in front of the committee in Sweden or Norway?
My position was that we have the opportunity to become a market leader in district heating specifically, which is always going to be part of a mixed economy.
With our planning regulations, you believe that?
I think if we implement the new zoning legislation, which is currently under consultation, in the right way, there is a huge opportunity here for us to do, advanced technologically advanced networks in a way that is the envy of some other territories, because we will be able to do them low carbon from the get-go, which is not, rather than having to retrofit in Sweden and the Netherlands. A lot of the existing heat is provided by gas and biomass, whereas here we will be able to do it using energy from waste and other third-party sources of heat.
Great. Okay. Thank you for clarifying my mind on that point. Tell me, in relation though to heat pumps, what has made it such a success in those other countries, whereas we, I think, the balanced pathway that the Committee on Climate Change set was something like 130,000 a year for this year, or last year rather, and we've actually achieved 69,000.
So within our business, we're using large-scale heat pumps in order to provide communal heatings to groups of buildings. Those large-scale heat pumps are a fundamental part of our technological solution. In terms of domestic-scale heat pumps, which I think is what you're asking about, I mean, there is obviously huge challenges here in terms of the supply chain, the skills, the affordability, and the understanding of that technology.
Any other takers for this one?
I might add, because we're looking similarly at the Nordic countries, and I think we've also visited Denmark and come back feeling a bit forlorn. However, this is not a kind of a new
Danish
thing.
plot to make it.
Exactly. But it's a multi-decadal project. But from our perspective, we're seeing this because I was listening to the earlier panel in terms of transitioning from an existing supply chain and skills and all this into a newer one. Fundamentally, what's working for us is real certainty in terms of policy direction. So, and I'm not being facetious, but at the high level, all across the political divide spectrum, people are saying this is the direction of travel, this is what we're doing. We've put significant funding behind it. So between now and 2030, which is not that very far away, we've €8 billion to spend on retrofitting, and we're in the business. There's sort of four boxes. One is creating that demand amongst homeowners. The other box is providing the skills that we have. The other box then is providing the funding, and then the governance framework in terms of planning and all the rest of it. So we're bringing all of those boxes up at the same time to create that demand.
Look, I totally get what you're saying about clarity and certainty of policy purpose. Yes. You've also, though, in Ireland, you've seen some success with hybrid schemes, haven't you, between gas boilers and heat pumps in domestic installations?
Well, we're only starting to roll out those, and our agency is currently piloting the use of hybrid heat pumps, because again, what we're trying to do is build up a more extensive menu for decarbonised heating. At the moment, it's kind of a heat pump or bust type situation, so we have to look. In areas, as Jenny pointed out, there'll be district heating will be the choice preference. Other areas it'll be pure heat pumps. Other areas it'll probably be hybrid heat pumps or things like that.
What's the efficiency of the hybrid heat pump?
I don't have figures to hand, but I think it very much depends on what way it's installed and what the balance between them.
I think it's in the briefing actually.
If I could just
yes, of course, Kieran.
I think the pathway that let Denmark get to the stage that it is and decarbonise as effectively as it is was a combination of district heating.
You mean apart from stealing our wind technology so successfully?
Exactly. It was a combination of district heating and the mandated connection, but specifically allowing gas and biomass CHP. So the government has moved very, very quickly in terms of regulating the sector from a few years ago when it wasn't regulated, as well as introducing zoning powers with mandated connection, which is very similar to where Denmark was. But the difference is they are trying to go straight to heat pumps with quite strict carbon standards. And some companies, like Vattenfall, are doing great work there. But you could make the system significantly cheaper if you allowed gas CHP as well as heat pumps.
Yes. Look, just very, very briefly on your biomass district heating schemes. What is the pollutant effect of that in the atmosphere? What are the emissions from it? And what is the impact in not actually ploughing back into the soil for the loss of organic content in the soil. Because you're trying, if you're actually trying to do this for the environment, it's not all about low emissions domestic heating supply.
And the biomass varies depending on...
well, you use a lot of straw biomass, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. There's straw and there are wood chips and wood pellets. I think the important thing for the UK is we're not suggesting that the UK would follow down the biomass CHP route. Frankly, there isn't enough biomass or waste to do that. But gas CHP can still offer a lot of the same benefits. And the idea is it's not fully decarbonised if you have some gas CHP and some heat pump, but it's better than where we currently are, where it's all on gas.
Thank you. Mr. Joyce, can I just ask you about the way in which other countries perhaps either do or don't allow their consumers the range of choice as to what they do? So obviously, if you're going to introduce a district heating scheme, it's pretty important that everybody's on board. How do you get over that sense of it's my house, I'll heat it the way I want to, thank you very much? Because we tried actually a hydrogen scheme in the UK to do that in a pilot phase in a village. It had to be scrapped because people, even though they were told that it would be free installation, it would be, they'd be put back on their gas if they wanted to at the end of it, free reinstallation with a new boiler. All those blandishments didn't work. People just said, no thanks.
So to bring to the committee some experiences from other countries, and I appreciate your question on choice. In Czechia, there's been a long-running, and I violently agree with Kieran on this, long-running stable
schemes. Wish we could have some violent agreement in Parliament. That would be nice.
Schemes are really, really important for industry and predictability and investment decisions. And in Czechia, they've been running what they call the new green savings program for homes since before 2013. And the same program has been running throughout this whole 11-year period, with great success, because geographically the spread of homes that have benefited from this scheme is nationwide. And that's another thing I would advise, is that programs, when they're designed, should be designed to not be discriminatory of different socioeconomic groups or different geographical regions, but should be available across the entire nation. Another good feature in Czechia is that the funding largely comes from carbon revenues. And here this is a lot of good sense. You earn some revenue from carbon, you don't put it in the general budget, you put it back to save energy. And that's a very good scheme that I think is worth bringing to your attention. A second thing, if I might, is I've been surprised that innovation hasn't been touched on much. And I wanted to bring to your attention that there's a lot of innovation in the renovation market across the EU, an approach called Energiesprong. Some of you may have heard of it. Whole house renovations taking place in 1 to 2 days on-site works, because all the panels are built in a factory in great conditions, attracting young female workers into good working conditions. And innovation is going to be needed to get to the levels of carbon reduction we need in the homes moving forward. And that's
but those panels are what, precisely?
They can be anything the customer wishes them to be, and in fact you can have huge consumer choice in a prefabricated renovation approach, and you can integrate the heating, ventilation and electrics in the panels that are built.
And there's information you could send the committee.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm, as someone who was born in the north of Ireland, spends a lot of time in the south, I'm loving the Irish accents and having two Ciarans, Ciaran and Kieran, and smiling to myself that you mentioned the Energy Efficiency Directive, because I was one of the rapporteurs when we rewrote it in 2012. So what I really want to focus on is what information different countries are giving to consumers. Okay, part of that work in 2012 was upgrading the energy performance certificates, and we hear, they need another upgrade. Okay, so what are other countries doing? And we'll start with Ireland, then we'll go to Denmark, on giving people good information on the energy performance of their homes and signposting them to trusted advice.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. So what we have in Ireland, I think, is one of the best ways of getting the information across is we use sustainable energy communities. So we have over 850 sustainable energy communities right across the country that are basically energy champions in their local community, and they're involved in providing advice, understanding the energy use in the community, and then identifying roadways and plans how they're going to improve that. So that's at a community level.
Who pays for them?
Well, we support them in the sense that we provide them with the grant for the Energy Master Plan, and we also have a network of mentors across the country, both at the county level and then also individual mentors that manage and support communities. So they're community-led with our support, and we provide information to them. Because we're an energy agency, we have a very significant role in terms of communicating via the website and various types of media communications, the role and honest, independent information in relation to energy and energy use. And for example, last year we would have had a very successful Reduce Your Use campaign as part of the energy crisis, but also as part of our development for one-stop shops. So there's a number of one-stop shops across Europe taking different approaches, and one approach is that they're purely advisory. The approach we've taken in Ireland is that the one-stop shops are effectively companies that will come in and do your whole energy upgrade. But part of that process, they deliver what we call a home energy assessment, which is a full engineering assessment of the energy performance of your home.
And how is that different to getting an energy performance certificate?
It's significantly more detailed than what we would call a BER, but an energy performance certificate. So it entails effectively three parts. One is the base level energy performance certificate. Another piece is a full technical assessment, which is a design for the heat pump. And the third part then is the individual journey with the homeowner, because every home is different, even be it on the same street. Somebody's got some work done, somebody has a conservatory, somebody doesn't. So we look at the homeowner preferences and we identify for them the different pathways of how they will get to the end point. In our case, it's a B2, which would be very similar to an EPC.
And that process is looking at both the cost of heating your home and the carbon used in heating your home, is it?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Other Kieran?
So in addition to Spot-Energy, so the website and the Danish Energy Agency, there's also the Danish Housing and Building Register, which contains a tool which will also analyse the performance of your house and email you with suggested improvements. We're currently working with UK and Scottish governments on trying to see whether that can be brought to the UK. But in general, for district heating, the biggest thing is that it's been known to work. Most people are on it, people's neighbours are on it. It's a bit like saying, how would you persuade people
That's
to gas?
for district heating. What about if I was looking at retrofitting my individual home?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, it'd be mostly the housing register and Spot-Energy.
So who signposts the homeowner to trusted advice and support on that individual exercise to decide if there isn't district heating available, how do I make my home more energy efficient?
So Spot-Energy has a website. They also do various campaigns, but again, the by and large, it is district heating that's the main tool, and people who don't do that tend to be more independently minded and go out and do it because they want to do something different.
And Adrian, from looking at across Europe, are there other countries we could learn from on this, giving individuals their trusted advice?
Absolutely, 100%. I've a paper that I will send to the committee next week, and I'm pointing you to several of those. For example, in the Basque region of Spain, there's a one-stop shop approach called Open Gela. It means open room, and it's a physical place in the locality where the worst performing buildings are, where the local community can come and meet and be informed and discuss and be engaged with the measures before they're put into place, with independent advice, expert advice, that are knowledgeable of the region. Also in Brussels, there's HomeGrade, another one-stop shop approach that gives more advice than the full service. But Hungary has the Renault Hub. Greece is rolling out a number of one-stop shops. It's beginning to be a model that's being appreciated for its true value. And I'm happy to say that the new revision of the Buildings Directive that you must know about is going to ask that there's one-stop shop for 80,000
One of the things this committee's noticed is that in England especially, a large number of properties in conservation areas, often in rural villages, every home, by definition, probably lots of them quite old, difficult to do. Those sorts of one-stop shops in your local area, you think they could make a big difference in these hard to treat?
Absolutely no question about it, because a homeowner is not an expert in building physics, is not an expert in building technologies. They need to be able to turn to a reliable, independent source of advice, and that's best another person and not a digital source, although that appeals to a certain segment of society. And yes, for heritage areas, it is possible to make significant improvements to the energy performance without impacting negatively on the heritage value. And a number of EU-funded projects have demonstrated the approaches that can be done.
And in terms of funding those one-stop shops, it sounds similar to the Irish Community Hero. They tend to be funded from state-funded sources rather than from the industry.
From my perspective, the best source of funding is a mixed funding, a blended funding between, which is, I think, what I understand is happening in Ireland. There is a certain sum given by the member state and a certain sum brought by the industry through certification or licensing, or because a lot of the one-stop shops have lists of certified or approved installers, so that they are a long list and you can go reliably to those installers, not just have to rely on the yellow pages. And that's also the trust issue, which was raised in some of the early discussions.
I've got one real last question,
important.
just to the Irish model, because they're probably most similar to a lot of the UK. How big geographically is a local area?
Well, we've been very open with our definition in relation to communities, so anybody can be a community. So we've had universities, we have some of the islands.
But is that Community Hero covering a 50-mile radius area or a 15-mile?
It could be a small town or it could be a small village. We have an SEC in the Irish Financial Services Centre. We have them here, there and everywhere, because the point we took a judgment call very early on in the process to say we want people thinking and working on their energy management place as opposed to being really prescriptive of what it should be. Just one other point about the one-stop shops, which is really, really important, is from a homeowner's perspective, you're going to a single point of contact, and we put a huge amount of work into this quality piece. So the homeowner doesn't know, generally speaking, I don't really want to know, to be honest, one thing from the other thing, or which I should do where, or what sequence I should do things in. The one-stop shop will take them through the entire journey, provide the assurance, and as Adrian said, some cases one-stop shops are contractors themselves. In some cases, they're effectively project management aggregators that bring in panels of contractors, but they'll take responsibility. So if you have a problem, you're not ringing the plumber and the heat pump guy and all the rest of it, you're ringing the one-stop shop.
Dr. Dan Poulter.
Thank you. Mr. Sinclair, how effectively have other countries delegated responsibilities for the home heating transition process?
So in Denmark, it's a mixture of public and private. The municipalities are very often involved. They tend to have multi-utility companies, of which heating is just a part, but equally the individual developers themselves have marketing and consumer engagement functions within them. Some of which would work in the UK, others of which are based around delivering Danish pastries to people to convince them to connect to your heat network, which maybe wouldn't translate so well.
So which ones would work in the UK?
So I think the local authority route is probably most effective. The UK is heading in that direction anyway, because with zoning powers for heat networks, the local authority will be the zoning coordinator by default. We're actually running a mentorship scheme with more than 50 local authorities in the UK and Scotland to try and help support them by showing them best practice from Danish developers. But it should be a combination really of the private sector, of the developers, and also the local authorities who understand the area.
I mean, just on that, I mean, the challenge is, I suppose, that as local authorities take on, if they were to take on that sort of responsibility, some local authorities, there'd be quite a lot of variability within that, and some local authorities, as we've seen, for example, in a slightly different thing, when they took on public health responsibilities, don't understand how to commission properly for public health, and that's led to quite a number of challenges. So what would you, to make this effective, if we're going to do that with local authorities, drawing on the examples in Denmark or elsewhere, how do you make sure that we actually had a system that was fit for purpose, and to help to sort of iron out some of the potential challenges of variability in practice, or indeed ability of local authorities to do that?
I mean, it has to be properly funded. The government has said that it will set aside specific funding for the zoning coordinator functions, but I think it's really key to get the people who actually design and build the heat networks involved as soon as possible, because they're the people who really can tell you what is and isn't feasible. So it is just a combination of the private sector expertise and the local authority having proper funding for the zoning coordinator role.
Okay, Did you want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I would agree. We see a really important role for local authorities in the UK in, as placemakers for their local area, and in understanding the needs of consumers and the built environment. And as part of that, a role as the zone coordinator, I think, is appropriate. But it is really important also that there is sufficient funding and expertise. We are a nascent market in district heating in the UK. There is a very limited pool of expertise currently, and local authorities don't have the biggest repository of that. So they do need to be supported by consultants and by appropriate funding from Treasury. And we think with standardisation, particularly set centrally in terms of standardised approaches to procurement and contracting. And in terms of the international examples, I mean, our business in the Netherlands has gone down a very similar route that the UK is looking at in terms of rollout of district heating, when municipalities have those zoning powers, and they are working again very much in partnership with the developers and the local authorities to make sure that you get the right scale and pace and technical solutions.
So you just I mean that level into the granularity there. So you'd actually have mandated national standards as a mechanism of showing local authorities what good looks like in delivering.
Yeah, I mean, and particularly in the Netherlands, I mean, they have made a government statement that they will come off gas by 2050, and then that gives the local authorities a standard against which to measure local initiatives, but we're also giving the local areas the independence to come up with their own targets. So, for example, Amsterdam, where we have a network that connects 145,000 customers, Amsterdam are looking to be fossil-free by 2040. So it's a real combination of the local authority working in partnership with the developers in those areas.
Yeah, I would agree that it varies very widely across the EU who gets the delegated power to make decisions in this field. I mean, from the national level to regional, and in many cases down to city level. But in all those levels, the capacity and the knowledge is not usually deep enough or good enough. And there's a European answer to this. It's called the Technical Support Instrument. So the European Commission under DG Reform has a fund, and each country applies on an annual basis and can get direct funding for capacity building and technical knowledge right into the governance level that's required. And a second instrument that I think is worth mentioning at European level is administered by the European Investment Bank. It's called the ELENA facility. And it gives a grant to a local authority or a community. I mean, it can be quite a small entity, but the commitment has to be that from the knowledge developed with that grant, at least 30 times the value of the grant is invested into real projects on the ground. And over the life of the ELENA project, the average leverage is 32, so it's higher than the minimum. So this approach of giving a helping hand at that critical start is a good one, but it's based on a very clear trajectory. The European Union knows where it's heading, and it's not pushing its target dates out. It's going to stick to them moving forward, and this is what gives certainty then to the market and to the market players. So yeah, it's kind of any governance level, but any level would need support.
But one very quick follow-up question about rural and off-grid properties, because I suppose if you have the challenge, I suppose, with the national framework is that may not always consider some of those properties adequately. So, what are there some good examples that you can think of, international or examples about where there has been effective schemes put in place for rural and off-grid?
I'm going to admit, can I take that one initially, then maybe Ciaran? I'm going to admit that we tend to not talk enough about rural properties at the European level, certainly. And across Europe as a whole, about 1/3 of the population lives in rural properties. So it is a question that is substantial in terms of the challenge moving forward. And the answers that I hear, I mean, small district heating schemes are mooted for some villages, but I'm not sure it's the right answer. And electrification is certainly the one that is being looked to as the right answer for rural properties. But again, electrification with improvement of the building and giving the controls and through digitalization to the owner to properly manage that in the operation phase.
Yeah, just I would agree with that. And most recently, we have done what we call a heat study. We looked at the heat demand across the country and identified areas where district heating might be suitable. And we have a large number of areas. But for rural one-off houses, we've identified typically in Ireland they're heated with oil, and to hit those ones, you have a really significant impact in relation to decarbonisation. So the grant schemes we've developed actually they're effectively menu-based, and so they bring everybody with them, so everybody can apply. It's just a flat menu, and that's what you get. And we've costed it out to try and attract certain types of properties, and it seems to be working reasonably well.
If I could, sorry, I was
very quickly, 20 seconds.
Very briefly, you can get very, very small networks that work very effectively. There are some with less than 3,000 people that have up to 6 different energy sources. They've got wind, solar, thermal storage. But the difficulty is the isolated rural houses in the UK which don't have good energy efficiency, because whatever you do, it will be very expensive.
Thank you. And man is always skilled and efficient with time. Mr. Posey.
Just a quick one, Chair, because I know we all want to get to PMQs, but I'm sure each of our witnesses heard the session we've just done on workforce and skills. Are there any lessons UK can learn from other countries? And is it always important to give these engineers time off the tools and for government to fund that time? So, Dr. Byrne.
Yeah, I love that phrase, and it's one we use regularly, and we are facing the exact same issues, really. You're trying to transition people from doing something they've done for 10, 15, 20 years into something new. So what we've done through the vocational training boards, we provide a range of courses, but we structure them in a way that's kind of more accessible. So they're done online, they're done night time, they're not all done on site, and in fact some of the training boards actually develop mobile rigs to bring effectively the training to the site. And what we're also starting to look at and consider is, do we provide a stipend in place? Because right now at the moment we have economic full employment in Ireland. We've got a very busy economy, and if you're not on the tools, you're actively losing money. And for what I call the man with the van, and I think one of our earlier contributors talked about 95% of the industry is small micro enterprises, that's the man with the van. If they're not delivering on the day, they're losing money. So we're looking at maybe do we provide a stipend to try and attract them into it. But there is a growing demand, because what we're doing is we're stimulating homeowners, and so when homeowners ask for it, they will have to provide it.
Right, Jenny Curtis.
Yeah, supply chain skills is a key issue. I mean, one of the things we're trying to do is bring new entrants into the market from abroad. So all the supply chain partners that we're working with in the Netherlands, can we get them to set up here, inward investment?
In the UK?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Mr. Joyce.
I think a question here is, how can you make this sector more attractive to draw in younger people, because it's an ageing sector, and more women, because and one of the ways forward is to bring in more robots, or cobots as they're called, that assist with the heavy work on site to attract younger workers in, and they bring a requirement of more skills in the digital and computing area that is very attractive to young generations. But then they would have to be given a career path that they know they can follow for 20 or 30 years, and that career path can be defined in national building renovation plans.
Kieran from Denmark.
So, and just mentioning bringing women into the sector, there's an organisation called District Heating Divas which does exactly that and is very successful. But in general, the supply chain will continue to be an issue, and I think if you give the market clear signals that you want to, for instance, build a lot of district heating, then the companies will find ways to make sure that training is there. But it's all about clear long-term decisions that they can plan around, so that they can put that in place.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Kieran, Sinclair, just pick up on something. When the colleagues returned from Denmark, they talked of the big volumes of water that Denmark has to store heat. And amazingly, they told me that these volumes of water lose 5% of the temperature in a year. Not a day or an hour, but a year. Just wondering, what volume of water is this? And presumably, and is very well insulated. And what temperatures are they at?
So that's pit thermal storage. I couldn't give you the volume of water off the top of my head, but
you could write us and let us know.
I absolutely will.
But roughly the temperature is stored at?
The temperature is usable for district heating, so 70, 80, 90 degrees.
So it's losing 5% of that 70, 80, 90 degrees in 1 year, which is pretty
that's for well-performing ones, but there are some research papers on it. Yeah.
And on the hybrid pumps, we found out through Google that it's about 2.5%. So they're equivalent to 2.5 times. They're equivalent to the air source pumps. Some say they can go up as far as 4 times.
All of this is available on the State of Energy website.
All of it is also available on the State of Energy website, where Google goes to. Thank you all. Maybe I should have said to our Irish guest today, Fáilte off when you started, but Míle maith agus beannacht and you. Thank you all. Order.
It's not really rude.
The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended.